Hi everyone, this is a video blog. This is a vlog of the build process and essentially just going through the motions of building a brand new arcade based off a new design. So I mocked this design up from just looking at a photo of the MVS213, which is a 2/3 size scale arcade cabinet that fits a CRT monitor inside. So my true intention is to build something basically a one-for-one replica of that, but because I can't find any drawings, I have to make them up. And whenever I design something from scratch, before I get too invested in the CAD, I always like to build it just to identify any shortcomings or mistakes that I just can't see looking at CAD. It's just easier for me to see the physical product and adjust from there. So this is that arcade cabinet, and this is version 1 of that design. So you can see from this drawing, this is only like 2/3 size from a full arcade cabinet. It's only 53 inches in height. I CNC'd this cabinet out because I have access to those tools, but you don't need to. You could do this with a jigsaw. And because this is a first iteration, I'm using some really crummy plywood. I don't want to put a lot of investment in here because I'm not super confident about the design yet. You can see this first test before I built anything. I did want to have it physically and sit down next to it to make sure it was comfortable to play. So it is more like a kid-size arcade, but if you're sitting on a short stool, I'm 6'1". This is somewhat comfortable just from this basic photo, so I decided to continue. Again, it's a short arcade, and the whole point of that is it fits more common parts, and it's not so massive that maybe one person could move it on their own. You know, full-size arcades are kind of tough to convince your significant other you can store them in the living room. So we're going to start with a slightly smaller scale. The width of this arcade is just built to width, so I picked a 5:4 ratio Dell monitor, and I wanted to get 2 players in it, so we're doing inside diameter from inside edge to the other inside edge. That's 22 inches. And the rest of all the interior parts were saw cut just on like a table saw. The last 2 things that I CNC'd and I waited till I had more of the body built out was the control panel and the monitor bezel, since sometimes it's just hard to get a nice straight cut on the interior sides of things. So both of those were CNC'd. And again, you can use a jigsaw and a circular saw if you're patient. So it kept building out panels. You can see that's just a basic 5:4 ratio monitor that I just got the dimensions in, and it's just sitting inside on its own stand. So no custom bracing, just going through the motions to get this thing built as simply as possible. So there are some kind of complicated angles at this control panel, and to tackle those, I had a SolidWorks file, and you could get the measured dimensions from all those angles, but if you're building this just one piece at a time over the course of basically before the pandemic, then you get shut down for 3-4 months, and then after, you can start to make mistakes that you just don't catch. So instead of taking and trusting the SolidWorks dimensions, I just made this jig to essentially push against any angle that I'm trying to copy for mating parts. And then I just take this to the table saw, adjust the blade until it's flush, and that's the angle. So it's so much easier just to do it that way than to bury yourself in, angle measurements with like 2 decimals of precision. So here's the rest of the back populated, and then these cutouts are just removable panels, and I drilled some holes so that you can remove them. At this point, I wanted to wire up the controls. These aren't anything fancy, just some leftover salvage parts from a different arcade controller, and I wired these up to wire to a Raspberry Pi. So I'm just doing all this crimping, and this is my breakout board that just clips onto the Raspberry Pi, breaks out all the GPIOs into screw terminals, which makes bigger arcades a lot easier to wire in this case. So that's what the entire setup. This is basically all the guts of the arcade cabinet. There's nothing fancy here or nothing new that I haven't covered before. So with it all wired up, I did just put some temporary artwork to make sure things worked and make sure playing it was comfortable, because basically the rest of the work is finishing, and that takes the majority of the time. So this is the look that we're going for with the front and back panels removed. So the next thing I had to do was cut the T-slot for the T-molding. And I don't have a T-slot at the moment, so I had to go buy a slot cutting bit. And unfortunately, the one that I bought didn't have the right size idler bearing. So I did something that you should never do, which is 3D print something that press fits on a bearing and spins at 25,000 RPM. So don't do this, because this is a slot you have to cut. And this was basically like 2 days before getting shut down completely before the pandemic. So this is something I just wanted to route and get over with. Hence the need to 3D print something and hope it doesn't fly off. So the way I cut this was just with the router facing one way and my body on the other side of the cabinet in case it did fly off, it wouldn't kill me. And it only fell off 3 times, routing the entire 20 linear feet of T-molding required. So this is what that slot looks like when it's cut. And again, that idler bearing, just make sure this slot cutter doesn't cut too deep or deeper than it has to in this, because there were some problems that I forgot about. And basically the entire assembly of this cabinet was glue and brad nails. So brad nails everywhere. You can see if I got too close to the edge with a brad nail, that would basically ruin the carbide teeth of the slot cutter. So I just had to make sure I marked out any brad nails that were too close to the edge. And again, the idler bearing, or the wider idler 3D printed part on that bearing, keeps me from cutting too deep or deeper than necessary for the T-molding. I had some more framing parts to do, and again, using the angled jig, it's just so much faster. So here's a little frame part on the back end that gives the back frame a little bit more rigidity, and that's that process. With the majority of the cabinet built, there was a bunch of filling, sanding going on that I didn't take photos of. Then we just did a couple coats of latex primer. From here on, it was to decide some paint colors, and we have quite a bit of leftover paint. So I decided we wanted to do that, and this was just to make some like orange and purple stripes. But these stripes, they were going to be parallel with the monitored angle, and that's this little angled lip right next to the monitor bezel. And this is how we determined to draw straight lines based on that, with just a T-square and another square. And just mark pencil lines up and down. And this is just some decent quality latex paint. So we laid some blue tape along the pencil lines and put a base coat of orange on everything, and then drew over that the purple lines and taped over that and filled in the purple. So again, I don't know what this theme is supposed to be. It's just with paint that we had. I did need to do some touch-up paint and paint the inside of the monitor cutout black just so you wouldn't see it, so it would blend away. And that was just some basic paint. So I had someone else do the artwork for this, and I'm very pleased with it. So this is just a control panel artwork, although I told the printers what size this should have been, like print 100% to scale. And for whatever reason, they scaled it down and put white borders on the edge, but that doesn't matter. Oh, you might notice the bottom cutout. That was also CNC'd as well, and the whole point of that is to show off the actual hardware that's running in this cabinet. And yeah, it's not showing off the Raspberry Pi because, again, this design is actually for authentic old school hardware that we'll do in version 2 or 3 eventually. So this gives you a taste of what the arcade's going to look like, and then we put all the T-mold on, and it really does clean up the look. And finally, I wasn't going to do artwork for the marquee just because it just takes so long. And instead I put some RGB adjustable LEDs inside and just put some like white paper to diffuse it, and use some aluminum 90-degree angles to cover up the trim. And that's the entire cabinet. So overall, I'm really pleased with it. I definitely think the size is just perfect. And the whole point of such the deep body is to actually fit a CRT monitor inside. And that CRT monitor is actually going to be a 13-inch CRT tube that I RGB modded so we can actually run some old school Sega Genesis hardware with RGB true colors. And that monitor is just going to be a 13-inch Curtis Mathis TV. I've already done a video on that, and this is what the slightly revised CAD model is going to look like. The only difference here is I had some dimensions that were a little bit too short as far as like the control panel sticking out past the profile of the body. And then the marquee, I really didn't have a plan for what I wanted to do. So this version is a little rough. So I did make a front cover piece with a routed slot that will hold some marquee artwork and hopefully clean up the front and make construction a little bit easier than the version I posted here. So again, here's the overall dimensions of what the next iteration is going to look like. And again, it's just, as far as the width is concerned, it's just built to fit whatever monitor you have. So this will fit a 13-inch CRT, and my plan is to put original hardware inside that I've done a lot of work on that I will go into more detail when version 2 is ready. So thanks for sticking around, and I had a lot of help as far as construction is concerned. And I don't want to list everyone's name in the video because I'll probably forget somebody. So I'll put that down in the comments below and make sure I give special thanks to all the help that I had with this. So thanks for watching.